Yo, what's good, everybody? It's your boy Jamie K back with another episode of Raise Your Voice. So, traditionally at this time, it's usually me and my homeboy McDonald G. Shout out to him. And we're really doing two really dope dudes. But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but he's out chilling with his family and they're doing their thing. And so I figured, man, why not? I just jump on for a few moments and just talk about some things that have been kind of pressing on me and that have been like really like messing with my brain, particularly from a social justice perspective. And so, as you know, this is Raise Your Voice. If you're tuning in and you're watching right now, you're also maybe familiar that this is also the name of my nonprofit organization. And we've been doing some great work in the community. We're still waiting for a shipment of sinks. And some of you have seen my posts from before that I put out these sinks in homeless areas where itinerant individuals, homeless individuals gather, so that they could wash their hands and be free from COVID-19. So we're about to get some more sinks, and we're gonna put some more out. Shout out to everybody who contributed to Raise Your Voice. Your donations have been able to supply the soap that we need, and to also make sure we get the materials. And there's going to be some other stuff that I'm going to let you know about later on in this conversation. So for anybody who's watching, I appreciate you coming in, stopping by, and hanging out with your boy. Please leave your comments, your suggestions, and let's dialogue together. There's a whole lot going on. Probably you saw in the description. I'm gonna mention Doug Batchelor. I'm gonna mention Trump. I'm gonna mention our schools and what's happening in our society, and just kind of rant a little bit. Hope that you feel me. Hope that you comment, and hope that we can we can have a good conversation. So let's start this thing off the right way by giving shout outs to everybody. Hit the like button. Um, my Thai dollars have been going to your bike. Nah, fam, this is strictly savings, and this was a gift that my wife got for me. And it would be better if the bike was not on the wall, that it was actually on the street, and that I was using it. But for now, I figure, hey, I might as well make it look pretty instead of just sitting somewhere. So I decided to hang it up. But yo, man, I appreciate you, Wes. Man, you came in, you killed it today, and the folks at City Temple are always appreciative of when you can break down the word. So peep this, man. Um, just this week, I got this post from somebody, and it was from Doug Batchelor. And not to me, but this is what he posted out in the public sphere. And I thought that this post was so problematic for so many levels, and I'm going to get down into it and break it down. So this is Doug Batchelor, the leader of Amazing Facts. I'm sure many of us, if you are Seventh-day Adventist, you are familiar with this guy, and just his popularity has grown. So I'm going to read it verbatim, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So this says, from Doug Batchelor, protesting the devil, exclamation point, in parentheses. He says, our church found a creative way to assemble safely on Sabbath without violating California bans on church gatherings. We are still allowed to gather and protest in California. So we are going to protest the devil. So here it goes. It says, dear Granite Bay members, you are heartily invited to exercise your First Amendment rights to participate in a peaceful gathering and freedom of speech by joining in a heartfelt protest on Saturday, August 15th at 10 a.m. That's today. As true Protestants, we will be peacefully protesting against the devil, sin, lawlessness, hate, and evil of every kind. Satan especially dislikes peaceful protest. And so during this gathering, we will be reviewing our protest manual, which may look quite similar to a Bible, rehearsing our protest slogans and songs, which are sometimes confused as hymns. We will be accepting contributions to underwrite our protest cause, might look like a church offering, petitioning the highest authority with our protest, which could resemble prayer, just saying. And our protest will not be very loud because we are hoping to disturb the devil and not our neighbor. Because this is a protest against Satan, there will be no looting, littering, blocking traffic, burning buildings, or flags. Smiling at others is encouraged. And so, yeah, that joint, when I saw it, I was livid, like steam blowing out of my head. And I wish I didn't close it. I should have kept it open because I'm going to pull out some things point by point, but I was just going nuts, right? So the first thing is this, is that why is it that you think that a protest against the devil has to happen inside of a church building? Like that's problematic, right? That you feel like you have to gather people in the building, risk their health, risk their well-being, because these people are not going to leave their children home. And most times, the people that are going to come to your building are senior citizens, one of the most vulnerable communities to the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So you think that we have to go into a building to protest the devil? No, you can't protest the devil from your home. Is that an issue? Number two, what else is problematic about it is that you said that we are protesting sin, lawlessness, and hate and evil. Now, this is a perfect way that white people, and not all white people, when I say that, I'm talking about some white people, but particularly I'm talking about Doug Batchelor, how they will try to turn the narrative from focusing on what the actual cause or what are the actual things that create sinfulness, lawlessness, hate, and evil, particularly in this moment that we're facing in the USA, United States of anxiety. It is this, is don't make the protest ambiguous in a sense that we are protesting hate and evil. No, protest what needs to be protested. Call sin by its rightful name. We are protesting white supremacy. We need to protest the fact that policing in America is not working well. We need to protest the fact that there are communities and infrastructure that are weak. We need to protest the things that Flint still has brown water. There are other communities where brown water is a commodity, where brown water is being, where, excuse me, clear water, clean water is a commodity, and people cannot get clean water to wash their clothes, to feed their children, to do the basic everyday things that the privileged have. White folks like Doug Batchelor will always find a way to distract and deter from what the actual problems are because they don't want to confront their own realities or confront the realities that they have created. And so here you are talking about let's protest against sin, lawlessness, and hate. No, bro, let's protest against the willful ignorance and the willful blindness that comes with you trying to say that that everything seems to be okay and the problems in this world are just because of sin and hate and evil. No, they're more than just sin, hate, and evil. They are direct results of certain actions that have been carried out by people you support. So one thing about me, man, I have like totally, I don't even listen to anything that Doug Batchelor says. From once I started hearing about his stance on women's ordination, I was like, chuck the deuces up. Because he is basically encouraging discrimination towards women within the church, gender inequality. But also too, I don't know if you saw the other day, he standing up in a group with a Bible in his hand of a bunch of men with rifles. Like, machine guns, AK-47s, you name it. Now, it's America. You got a right to be wherever you want to be. But you can't tell me there weren't no white supremacists in that group. You can't tell me that there weren't some people in that group that hate the Black Lives Matter movement. And now I know I'm making assumptions, but call a spade and for what it is. And so, we got to acknowledge too that there are a lot of people in the higher ups within our church who have revealed themselves as what do you call it? As strong Trump supporters, strong supporters of what Donald Trump is doing. But the other thing with that problematic for me with Doug Batchelor's post is also this. It was the ending of the post where he says that there will be no looting, no burning down buildings and things of that nature, which is a direct stab at the movements that have been happening and also the narratives that have gone out to say that because of these marches and these protests, that these groups are causing these burning and looting of buildings. No, call a spade a spade. This is not black people that are burning This is not because of the protest that these buildings are burning and being looted and being destroyed. That's not the reason why that's happening. There are people who are joining in and acting like they are part of the protest, and they are saying that they are, that they are with that, and so the media wants to attach that bad narrative to a good narrative, but they're just trying to twist it. But it's all part of the game, and Doug Batchelor has bought into it. Number three about gathering in the building that I just don't understand when it comes to churches. The purpose of church is for fellowship and for gathering. Like, we meet in the building to hug, to shake hands, to speak to each other. We don't meet in that building to socially distance. So what I don't understand is, why is there a press or a push to get people to meet in the building, to have them be to social distance, which defeats the whole purpose of having church? It defeats the whole purpose of why we're in the building. If the building was there for fellowship, and if we got to go into a building to six feet apart from each other, then what sense does that really make? For me, I wish Doug had just came out and just said from the jump, yo, we need you to come into the building because we want to start collecting money again. Because that's the only reason that I can see. No, well, that's not the only reason I can see, but that's one of the prime reasons. Now, I can understand gathering the building because for some senior citizens, and even for, let me not just point out senior citizens, but for some people, the fact that church was their one way to have fellowship, and one way that they can meet with a community, and one way that they can interact with others. And so if that's the case, then we may need to redirect and repurpose how we do church. And maybe we need to start small groups and gathering and people's homes and in that nature. But if the purpose of church is for fellowship, what sense does it make to open up a building if we still have to social distance? And so Doug Batchelor, bruh, you need to check your theology, because it's messing with your sociology, and which has defined your anthropology. And your anthropology right now and how you view human beings, I think that post was a selfish post, because you're trying to get people to come to a building? To be inside, to what? To listen to you speak? But you have one of the largest platforms on the internet? And what is it for you to come and hear them speak about your thoughts and your ideas? Because half of the stuff that Doug has been saying has not been sound biblically. They have just been a lot of his ideas imposed on the text of how he interpreted it, and then he wants you to interpret it the same way. And so nevertheless, man, Doug has been doing some reckless stuff out there, and I just thought that post was crazy. But the core of why I really wanted to talk about that was that he tried to, they changed the narrative, and not calling a spade for what a spade is, and not saying what we need to actually be protesting. When Jesus walked the earth, and you can read throughout the New Testament, he was in direct opposition with the government, with the Roman oppressive government. And all of the things that he did always spoke in counteraction to how they were treating the poor, the lame, and the blind, and how they were treating the widows, and how Jesus was empowering them through healing them, sending them back to the temple, and by his teachings. And so as long as you are not, and here's what I want to say, I want to get this out there. If you are not speaking a message that goes against what the system is saying, then you ain't doing nothing. You ain't doing nothing for social justice. Let me tell you something. The world could care less that you go to church on Saturday. The world could care less that you don't do anything on Friday night and that you worship. They're like wonderful. But the only time problems come is when you begin to attack the state. Jesus was crucified by the state. Now, why was Jesus crucified by the state? Yes, the Jews colluded with the Romans to get him out. But Jesus was doing some real apocalyptic, revolutionary stuff that was messing with money, that was messing with systems, and which made him public enemy number one. And so when we talk about the church and persecution, as a matter of fact, maybe one day I'll come back and do another video about Jason's house, and and the accusation in Paul, and the accusation in the book of Acts. And when they said that this is why they arrested them, was because they said these are the ones who are turning the world upside down. Now, they weren't just turning the world upside down. Now, possibly it could be because they were baptizing a lot of people and removing funds from the government. But once you start messing with money and start messing with the government, with the systems, that's when they will begin to come after you. And so, Doug, you ain't messing with no systems. You ain't messing with no governments. As a matter of fact, you are complicit. You are in it. You are in full engagement with it, and it's sad to see, false prophets like that song by J. Cole. When he's talking about so many people that you looked up to, and then you see when they really show who they are, and you become disenfranchised, and then the veil is lifted. And so we got to stay woke and be careful for things like that about people who want to change the narrative from what is actually happening. And I don't want to spend too much time on that because I don't think that's really that important. But what's really even more important is this is COVID 45, 46 minus 1, Adolf Twitler, the Lion King, Agent Orange, the chief toddler in charge, is the world's most dangerous human being. Trump is dangerous. COVID 45 is dangerous. And like I said, if you're watching this right now, would love to have your comments, love to hear what you have to say. But COVID 45 is dangerous. I didn't see this before, but it's all beginning to make sense. The undermining and underfunding of the United States Postal Service isn't new in this administration. I think, as a matter of fact, for the last 2 years, we have been witnessing this conversation that's been being had about him not wanting to fund the post office, and nobody uses the post office. And newsflash, I use the post office. I go there regularly, pick up packages and to mail packages. So it is still very useful. But interestingly enough, the conversation has been amplified because of the November elections and COVID-19. And he blatantly came out the other day and said, I am not going to fund the U.S. Postal Service because of mail-in ballots and people being able to vote through the mail. That is a direct assault on the right to vote, the right to free speech. As a matter of fact, let's just call our Constitution to be able to exercise your right, your citizenship, your law-given right to decide whom you want to be president. And this is almost becoming like a dictatorship. And what bothers me about this is that Republicans will not stand up to this guy, but that they are weak and cowardly. Now, it's okay to be a Republican or a Democrat. That's fine. Nobody cares. You can choose whatever party you want to be. Kanye West is part of the birthday party. If y'all want to join the birthday party, by all means, do that. Knock yourself out. But the fact that he wants to undermine the post office so that people cannot vote in November, people who cannot make it out to the polls, even in the midst of COVID-19, who want to social distance because it's going to be crazy coming up in November for these elections. But to undermine it and to try to bully your way back into the office, and then to say that it is going to be unfair, that is dangerous, y'all. Now, I know that you already knew that he was dangerous from before, but to see like these things happening before our very eyes has to shake you, has to rock you, and has to alarm you. Now, here's my question to those listening and to anybody who will listen to this is, what are we doing to counteract that? And what do I mean by that is, okay, are we looking at and trying to figure out ways to register people to vote, to make sure that it is accessible for people in our communities to vote, and to make sure that we continue to press on and make sure that by mail-in vote is not taken away, or that it's not, the system does not become sabotaged. And so even though Trump may say, oh, because this rhetoric, and let me tell you something, he is a master at the plot twist and creating narratives that his worshipers will believe and not fact check. And so he's going to go on and say, oh, it's going to be erroneous. The election will be stolen. And that if I lose, it's because of these mail-in ballots and people will mail in twice and the count won't be right. He has a way of changing the narratives, of doing a plot twist and scaring people into what is not a reality. He creates false realities and then people run with it. And then they believe these conspiracy theories and the things that comes from him as actual and factual. As a matter of fact, he's back at it again. He is now claiming the same thing that got him to his rise to popularity within the political arena, because nobody took Trump seriously politically. And the people who didn't take him seriously back then don't take him seriously today. And what he's rising back up now with, because he doesn't have ideas, he doesn't have an imagination, he's not creative, and he's not the brightest light bulb in the room. So now he's starting with the birther narrative with Kamala Harris. So interestingly enough, right? If you don't think Trump is a racist, then I don't think there's any other way that I will be able to convince you. It's interesting that when it comes to black people, he always questions their citizenship. As if to say that a black person with a name like Barack, a black person with a name like Kamala, a black person with a name like Jamal, or whatever names that are typically attached to black people, that if they have a name like that they can't be born in America, that something must be up, that they're not American. So for Trump, American means being white. American means being a black person who supports and who believes in everything that he says and done. That's what makes you an American. But it's interesting how he can come out with that. It becomes news, and the people who vote for him do one or two things. They believe it or they don't believe it, but they still go out and vote for him. And so he's trying to start this whole birther narrative with Kamala Harris and trying to say that she's not American and that we need to go check her birth certificate. And here's what's going to happen. That guy's a mastermind. He's a mastermind at undermining things. His followers, let me stop saying followers, his disciples is a better word. His worshipers will go out and they will begin to start spewing that false narrative wherever they go. And why I call them worshipers is this: because Trump jumped on the scene as the white savior who is going to make America great again. And as this white savior, if you look at Trump as your savior, then when there's something wrong, you will never be able to see it. Because at the end of the day, he's going to lift you out of your so-called poverty and degradation and the fact that you're not first in line anymore. And he feeds into your into this pity, pathetic, and this we've been taken advantage of narrative by these immigrants. And that's always been his whole presidency. It is about Hispanic removal. It is about Latino removal. It is about Negro removal. It is about removal of anything or anyone who isn't white, who doesn't have blonde hair and blue eyes, or who does not worship him. And so it's interestingly enough that the black people that do follow and support him, they never speak about those things, or they never call him out for that. And they try to go around hoops and they try to go around so many things. Now, nobody is perfect, but ain't a whole lot of people like COVID-45. COVID-45 is something that we have never seen or we have never even witnessed before. And perhaps, Andrew Jackson, who he looks up to, perhaps other presidents that have come before. I mean, for black people, I think a lot of us thought that Reagan was the worst president to black America. But for this guy, COVID-45, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm just afraid of how dangerous he is. I'm also afraid of the fact that the Biden-Kamala Harris ticket is not a guarantee that the Pence COVID-45 ticket is going to go away or that they're going to lose. And so we need to make sure that we got our folks and that they are voting and that they are ready to speak up and speak out about injustice and what's happening in our country. Like our Constitution is literally being destroyed right before our eyes. And we all know that the Constitution would really have us in mind, but yet still we benefited from some of the things that the Constitution had to say. And so keep an eye out for COVID 45 and what he's doing with the USPS. But I want to say this to our churches, and to our pastors, to our leaders, and to all our revolutionaries who are watching this right now. There's some things that you can do. We can sign up to be a worker at a polling station, because here's what they're going to do. Voter suppression is real. And you're going to have some of these polling stations that are going to try to close the doors early so that people cannot vote. And this voter suppression primarily happens in black and brown neighborhoods. They do not want that. You can even also support LeBron James movement, and that they're saying that for people who have been released from jail, until they complete all and pay all of their penalties and all of the court fees and all of the fees that they have, that's when they'll be able to vote. And so LeBron James has started this movement with some other prominent individuals to make sure that they're paying all those fees, so that these individuals who have been incarcerated can also get their vote out. And then also let's try to see if we can make our churches, our offices, polling stations, and let's open up our vans to get people to the office. Now, I know that the president does not affect you as much as your local elected officials, but there is something about this guy, COVID 45, 46 minus one, Agent Orange, Adolf Hitler, that inspires white supremacy, that inspires racism, that ignites bigotry and xenophobia that cannot be tolerated anymore. And it cannot be accepted. And, the Republican Party, man, y'all something else. Facts on facts. Y'all are something else that y'all cannot stand up to him. Shout out to the ones who have stood up to him and have lost their job because they did that. But the fact that you were letting and allowing this guy do some of the stuff that he's doing is just asinine to me. He just literally promoted this woman. I forgot her name. Somebody in the chat box, y'all could probably remind me. But she is a known believer of the QAnon theory, and that she has been known to say have some very racist comments, and known to say these things. And all of these things that is happening is threatening religious liberty, is threatening religious freedom. And here's what's important. It is threatening you as the citizen, you as a person, even if you're not a citizen that lives in America, your family, your children, things that Trump has been allowed to put into place and to dismantle won't really probably have a direct impact on you, but it will also impact the children that have to grow up in this country after he's long and gone. And so we have to think about, who do we fight for? Who are we doing this for? And who do we need to remember? So I appreciate you. Yo, that's my dude, Kerwin Jones. Should have had you on this episode right now, but it is the new Confederate Party. It is the new Jim Crow, as some would say. It is terrorism, and it is displaying and manifesting itself clearly and boldly in our society and in our world. And I just can't sit back and accept it. And I also can't sit back and accept the church's complicitness with it. And the fact that, our conversations aren't about what's happening right now and what's happening in the immediate, and that we find more comfort, and maybe that is comforting, that we find more comfort on looking at the future, but we can't get to the future until we confront the present, confront the right now. Looking on from the UK, things are not great either. Yeah, Donna Palmer, you got your own COVID 45, who's in office right now, and the world, as you can see, the world is it is going through this. It is this swelling that is happening now. It is happening right now. It is this. You have this revival of wokeness, this revival of thinking, this revival of processing things. But at the same time, that comes with this revival of wokeness is this counter wokeness that wants to suppress those that are rising up. And it's always like that. It's always that case. It's that you find a group of people who are rallying, who are fighting for justice, for equality. At every time that happens, there is a group, an empire that comes up that wants to suppress that. And that's biblical narrative as well. You always see that throughout the scriptures. You see that with Egypt, and you see that with Israel when the Bible says that, the Israelites were growing in number, and they were they were getting large, and Pharaoh said, we must go and murder the boys so that they can't grow. That whenever there's like a swelling up of God's people, or a swelling up of a movement, there will always be a counter movement that will try to subside it, that will try to create a narrative about it. And so for the UK, for what's happening around the world, something is going on, friends. And it's interesting times that we are living in right now, but we got to stay woke, and we got to not only remember what holds and what is down the future and who has the future in his hands, but we must also remember that we have power within our hands right now to create the change that we so desperately need, not just for ourselves, but for our children too. And so COVID 45, he is on a mission to destroy poor people. I mean, and not just poor people, black and brown people. With the whole thing with going back to school, which is another issue, right? Which is crazy to me that this government and governments in America, particularly in red states, southern states, states that I live in, like Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, where the Midwest, where COVID cases are rising. They're not going down, they are rising, y'all. They are getting more and more, and that people are contracting this virus at an alarming rate. That they are willing to open up schools. And now we're seeing a different shift, that children are contracting COVID-19 much higher than they were before. And that they're willing to put at risk children, and they are willing to put at risk the teachers, all because they want to not, I'm going to say that simply because a few things. The stimulus package, they do not want to continue to pay people to give the money that rightfully belongs to the citizens, but to also show and see that human life is not regarded as long as you are a middle class working person in this country. And what's interesting about this is that white people are beginning to discover this as well. Before it was just essential workers, and we knew that most essential workers were African American people. We were doing the jobs like the waiter, the waitress, and those various things that make this world turn. But now that we have seen this push to put kids back in school, has to be alarming and has to be scary. That there are people who are resigning, teachers who are resigning because I'm not putting my life at risk. And what's crazy about opening schools is that schools are contained areas, and there is not a lot of ventilation within classrooms. You have, at least in the schools I went to, we had these big windows that we could never open because there were cages on them. And so the only way you could open it was from the outside. The janitor had like this big stick, and he would open up the school. People were like, yo, what school did you go to? But here's what's crazy is that you want to open up schools where the virus will be able to thrive, where the virus will be able to live and to infect other people, and not just teachers. And not only that, what part of your brain thinks that a child is going to be willing to wear a mask for how many hours they stay in school all day? Not only that, we don't know who that child has been exposed to and could have bring that coronavirus into that environment. And so I still don't understand, why is it the push to get people back in the building or to get people back working? But I understand why the push is. The Congress, which is Republican led, does not want to give people another stimulus check. And it's not because America doesn't have money. America got money. They got the money. Shoot, they print their own money. Isn't there like a US Mint? They got the money. You've been paying taxes all your life. But here's what the Republican Party wants to do. They want to cut the unemployment benefit check from $600 to $200. Now, who in the world can live off of $200? If I go to the grocery store just to feed my family, I'm spending almost about $200 on the rising cost of food just to put something in their mouths. And so now we have this predicament that we're in where Democrats and Republicans are not talking anymore. There is a cease, and they have taken not a siesta, but they have just moved away from having conversations because they can't seem to agree on the stimulus package that you deserve. And this is one of the problems in our country is that look, these senators, these public elected officials are not missing a check. They are not wanting for anything. They are receiving what they need. But the people who are unemployed, to the teachers that have to show up to work, to the children that have to risk themselves and go to school and be in these buildings, they're the ones whose lives are at stake. And it seems like the power from the people has shifted and is only going to those that are on the top. And the other thing too is this: is like I know that there are some parents who requested to say, "Hey, I want my child back in school. They need to be in school," and I get it, I believe it, and I see why. Because if you're an essential worker, you don't have the luxury of taking time off in order to stay home with your child to go to school and to put them on a device. And I'm going to get to the device conversation in a minute. To put them on a device and watch them as they stay home and you stay home as well. You're an essential worker. You need to go to work because why? Your unemployment benefit check is gone. So you need to find a job once and be able to keep a roof on your head. But when you're so far removed from the realities of what people are facing, you can do something like take a recess in Congress, or you can sit down and debate about $600 versus $200. If it's not affecting you, then you don't have a problem with it. And so that's another issue too, right? Is that you have this government that is making decisions on behalf of individuals, and individuals out here are dying and people out here are suffering. And so one of the things that I want to start doing with Raise Your Voice that is coming to me right now is how do we empower each other and how do we find ways to empower locally? I was sitting down and I was thinking about the whole device situation. Yo, yeah, you won't believe it. That I read a report about somebody having to stay at least 7 hours in a line just to get a device for their child. And that was in a nice neighborhood in the Mansfield school district. In the Dallas school district, a mother stayed in line for umpteen hours. She has 3 school-age children, and they only gave her one device. Now, do you see how problematic that is? That means only one child can attend school or be online while the other 2 have to sit down and wait because they have to share one device. How is it that a country with so many resources, that companies like Dell, companies like Microsoft, companies like Apple, companies like HP that make devices, that make all these things, but yet still in impoverished communities, a mother of 3 has to share one device with her children so that they can get an education. And if you're telling me that there is no difference in the way black and brown people are treated in this country, then I don't know, you need to take your blinders off. And so my people that are listening, to the 25 people that are on here right now, let's maybe somehow brainstorm on ways that we can collect devices. If you have an old device and maybe that you're not using, or if you know somebody with a hookup with devices, let's probably start thinking about how can we get those devices into the hands of the children who need to stay home in order that they can go to school and so that they can have receive the education that they can. Not only that, would you also know this, that there are neighborhoods in major cities that don't have high-speed internet? I'm gonna let that soak in. That the infrastructure in their communities does not allow fiber, they not allowed, they just don't have fiber optic cable running in their communities so that they can have high-speed internet. That their internet, they have Wi-Fi, but it's at an extremely slow pace. So there are so many injustices that are happening, injustices that go right over our heads, because the simple fact is this, is that the most difficult thing to do is to convince people with privilege what it's like not to have privilege. And so it's really hard for a person who who has the privilege of jumping in a car. Say if you don't have a supermarket in your neighborhood that you can jump in a car and go to the supermarket and you can buy your fresh produce and all that other stuff. The people who don't have that privilege, they don't understand. Um, People with privilege don't understand what a life is like without having a car, what a life is like without being able to just walk to the supermarket and buy fresh produce, what that life is. And so we have to think about these things as human beings, of how we are divinely connected to each other. And that if my brother or my sister is suffering, then I am suffering as well. It's called the Ubuntu, right? Is that I am as good as my neighbor, or I am as good as you are. Because when one of us is doing well and five of us are doing bad, that one is not doing well. And so, how do we bridge that gap to bring connectivity so that other people can survive and thrive the same way we do? How do we sacrifice some of our privileges so that others can have the same privilege as well? And to remove the narrative of thinking that poor people want to be poor because they're just lazy or because they want that. Because in understanding that, that's kind of the way Trump thinks, right? That's kind of the way that America has viewed people for a while. That these people don't want healthy food. These people don't want to be better. All they want to do is shoot each other. All they want to do is have babies. All they want to do is just mooch off the system, which is crazy because statistics will show you that there are a lot more white people on benefits, government benefits, than there are black people. Jews have multiple babies. And if you didn't know something about Jews, is this, is that the reason why they have multiple babies is because they're trying to replenish the earth because of all the children and all the people that they lost during the Holocaust. And so that's why they just keep on having baby after baby after baby after baby. And so when black people have baby after baby after baby, it's always they're loose, they're trying to get money from the government, and they're not doing, they're not great citizens. So we got to change narratives. We got to change the way we think about people, the way we view people, and the things that we do. And so in understanding that, there are a lot of tragedies that are happening in this world. And so Renee Hampton, I'll post the post that says with Doug's words about opening the churches and protesting the devil. Like on the surface, I'm just going back on the surface, his words don't look problematic, but when you're woke and you read them, you can say like, okay, that's an issue. That's problematic right there. And and those are just some of the things. So I kind of lost my train of thought of what I was talking about. But I appreciate you, Renee Hampton. B. Leah, good to see you. We have to look at poverty as a tool of oppression, the same as racism and sexism. There is trauma associated with poverty. And that's so good. So let's talk a little bit about that, right? And the definition of poverty and how our minds have been socially conditioned is this way, is that when we hear the word poverty, we only see people and we only see a certain group of people. And so most times those people that you see are homeless, they're black, and or they're living in a impoverished community. Now that's true, but poverty does not only should not only be defined as in wealth or as in accolades or as in resources, because we can also be poor in spirit. We can also be poor in judgment. We can also be poor in benevolence and poor in our treatment of others. And so, the truth be told, we all experience some sort of level of poverty. Now, poverty may not look the same way for some people, but there are also some different ways that poverty is manifested. It's just that we always associate poverty with human beings and with them not having access to certain things, which is factual, which is true. I'm not negating that. But what are the causes of these things that create these impoverished conditions? It is impoverished thinking towards poor people. It is in thinking that, creating narratives about the way they think, about the way they live, and about the things that they do, and the way that they think. And so, that is a poor mental state to think about poor people that way and not look at the conditions that create poverty. and why certain people do the things they do. As I said earlier on another show, is that you cannot judge a person's choices if you haven't taken time to look at their options. And when you look at the options that certain people have had presented before them, then you can kind of understand and determine why they took the road that they did. And a lot of times, as church folks, we become so privileged and we become so heavenly minded that we would condemn the family that eats KFC on Monday and then Popeyes on Tuesday, or Popeyes during the week. So let's think about that. If I only got $20 and I want to eat healthy and I want to make sure that I'm living the best life that I could physically, if I only got $20 to work with and I got 5 hungry mouths to feed, or let's not say 5, let's say 3 hungry mouths to feed, I got to find a way to stretch this $20. Now, am I going to go to I want to go to the grocery store. I want to buy some organic lettuce and some organic tomatoes and all that stuff. And I want to, but I'm thinking about my kids are hungry right now. And right now I got to get them something to eat. And I feel like this KFC and biscuits and fries is going to put something in their belly so that they can go to sleep without crying more than those fruits and vegetables do. Because remember this, I got to catch an Uber to get to Trader Joe's, to get to Sprouts, to get to Whole Foods, to get to a good supermarket, which is going to take half of that $20. And then by the time I get in there, the only thing I can pick up are a few things here and there. And then when I get back home, my kids are hungry because I can't divide that up so that all of them can eat. So don't judge a person's choices until you have analyzed their options and until you analyze everything that they have to go through. But, I started out this conversation talking about being woke and being conscious to all the things that are happening to COVID-45, who is very dangerous. Very dangerous, and there are a lot of things that he's doing that sometimes we can't see by choosing judges from the Federalist Society who are conservative known judges who think the way that Trump thinks, who do the things that Trump does, and that these are judges who will be in off, who will be in their positions for some 13, some 15, some 20 years, that they will be there. And one thing that we need to know and understand is that this guy has put more has seated more judges than Obama has in his 8 years of presidency. And this guy's only been around for 4 years. And so those were just some of the things that I wanted to talk about and for us to be woke. And I appreciate all those that joined in, that commented, and that are engaged. And I'm going to try to do this every week or every now and then, to just when there's an article that comes up to my attention that we need to talk about it and extrapolate it. And there was this other there was this other interesting piece that I saw today on The Root. And the article says this. It says, documents reveal that federal agency monitored Black Lives Matter demonstrations, but ignored white supremacists involved in violent protests. So this ain't new. COINTELPRO, a surveillance system created by the FBI to watch Martin Luther King Jr., to watch Malcolm X, to watch the FBI. This is nothing new that our government has done, and they're still doing it today. That here they are watching Black Lives Matter demonstrations, which are peaceful movements, which are peaceful gatherings to express the fact that Black lives need to be valued and cherished in our country, just like all other values, all other lives are valued and cherished. But yet still they are not investigating. They ignored white supremacist involvement in violent protest. That as I was saying before, that they try to put this narrative on Black Lives Matters marches and as to say that they are inciting violence and burning and looting down buildings. The organizers of these marches are not creating that. There are people who are infiltrating these marches and who are creating havoc and who are doing these things intentionally so that it can be attached to the narrative that whenever Black people get together We destroy and we break stuff up. As a matter of fact, just recently, with the burning of the Target of the in the recent death of George Floyd, and I forgot where that was, but there was a burning down in Target that incited a lot of news media outlets to put that on display. That was started by this white guy with this mask on when he was walking around breaking the windows. And then you had there are videos out there of Black Lives Matter movements and the protests, and they are basically stopping people from looting because they're saying you are going to destroy or you are going to mess up what we are trying to accomplish. And so that's what it is about the media, man. The media will make you hate the people in the hoodies and love the people in the suits. And what do I mean by that? Is that it will make you hate the people who are on the streets, who are really trying to make a difference, but you will love the people who are in office and who are actually causing the mayhem and the destruction and all the calamities by the policies that are set forth. And so I am all for defund the police and refund the people. I think my boy Edwin Robinson, I saw that as one of his hashtags, and I was like, man, that is creative. Defund and refund. Defund the police. Why? Because the truth be told, the system ain't working, y'all. It ain't working. When you look at how Breonna Taylor was murdered by these police officers, it is insane. Like, Breonna Taylor is in her home. The police did not announce who they were. The boyfriend takes out his gun because he's like, all right, somebody's breaking into my house. They're not announcing who they are. It must be a home invasion. He's not going to say, oh, it's the police. They're coming in. He grabs his gun. He starts shooting at the floor. Look at this. He starts shooting at the floor. The police start shooting everywhere. Like there are bullet holes all throughout the house. Isn't it crazy? This is what's crazy. Is the one who is not an officer acted more trained or in a trained manner than the ones who are supposed to be trained. And by their disregard for human life and reckless abandonment with the use of a gun, an innocent life was taken. Not only that, they should not have even been at Breonna Taylor's house. The suspected drug dealer was not living there. She wasn't even as known as a suspect, a suspect or as a known threat. And so here it is, this reckless system that was rooted in slave watching. It's just not working. It's not working the way that it intends to be. So I'm all for defunding the police. I'm not saying get rid of the police, but how about we put less resources into taking up primarily in most cities all of the budget, most of the budget, and put the money where it needs to be. Put the money in the schools and education. Put the money in the social workers' hands. Put the money in the resources that can create the environments that prevent poverty and crime. Defund the police, refund the people. But just today, NYPD union just backed and supported Donald Trump. Of course they would. Because you got to remember, or you got to know, the biggest gang in America is the police force. They bigger than the Crips. They bigger than the Bloods. They bigger than all them gangs. They are the largest blue gang in America. And I'm not saying that all police are bad. I'm saying that there are some excellent police. I know a lot of them. Well, at least a few of them that go to my church. But it's not just bad trees on an apple. We got a bad tree. And the only way to fix that tree is you can put as much dirt as you want around it, but you got to pull that stuff up from the roots and start all over again. And so, yo, y'all, this was 57 minutes of me straight talking off the top of my dome piece. I appreciate everybody who chimed in, everybody who's talking. Crystal Grayson, you are amazing. B. Leah, you are amazing as well. Kerwin Jones, Pastor Jones, you are amazing. Tashoy Robinson, you are a gift to humanity. Man, I appreciate each and every one of you. Sister Jackson, it's been a long time, but you still looking good. And I know your husband is right beside you as well. So please, Brother Jackson, don't beat me up. But you guys look great. Kenneth Dorsey, thank you for all your comments. Thank you for all your feedback. Donna Palmer, all the way from the UK. Shout out to my friends across the pond. But let's keep the conversation going. To anybody I didn't shout out, I'm so sorry. But I appreciate you and thank you for listening to me. I'm not the smartest person in the building, but I do have some things that I think that needs to get out. And I'll try to do this every week and just try to continue to talk about the things that matter and why they matter and why we should always stay woke. So this is your boy Jamie K signing out. Remember to raise your voice. Oh, and before I go, hit me up if you want to make a monetary contribution to Raise Your Voice, my nonprofit organization. It is tax deductible. We are registered by the state. And also, I would love to get your ideas about how do we get devices into the hands of the children in the community and into the hands of the people that need it the most, the people who can't afford it, and to the mother who has, or to the father who has 3 or 4 kids and they've only been subjected to one device. So let's talk, let's brainstorm, let's change the world. And once again, this is Jamie, Ubuntu, all day, every day, signing out. Peace.